5 days ago, the Senate passed for the third time a continuing resolution to keep the government open and sent it to the House. It's well past time for Speaker Boehner to bring it to a vote. Republicans want to negotiate changes in the Affordable Care Act. Of course, we'll talk about that once the government is functioning, but we should not and will not allow the United States government to be held hostage by the Republicans while we're talking about the Affordable Care Act or any other subject which they or we wish to talk about. Now, Madam President, I am keenly aware, as Chairman of the Armed Services Committee, that one of the most devastating effects of this Republican shutdown is its damage to our national security. Already, our men and women in uniform have been asked to operate under the damaging effects of sequestration. Those cuts have done serious harm to our military readiness and military families, and the shutdown is just making things far worse. Because of the House Republican shutdown, workers at Defense Department maintenance depots around the country who should be repairing and preparing vehicles, ships, and aircraft for combat are instead furloughed, along with hundreds of thousands of other Department of Defense civilians. Training exercises have largely come to a halt, and anyone who thinks that's no big deal has never spent any time with our men and women in uniform. The key factor in our military's effectiveness isn't our sophisticated weapon systems, as important as they are. It's the highly trained men and women who employ those weapons. Every day of this shutdown wears away the sharp edge of their readiness to respond to crises around the world. Now, some troops and their families won't get tuition assistance. Most travel is suspended, including many permanent changes of station. That means that military families scheduled to move to a new location who may have already sold a home at their old duty location or committed to a lease or a mortgage at their new location, and spouses who need to start a job search face financial loss and disruption and uncertainty in their lives. Our troops and their families can't even go to their on-post commissaries because they're closed. Now, the bill that we passed last week to ensure that our troops would receive paychecks were all well and good, but that did not address the many shortfalls that our troops and their families face during this shutdown. Another truly outrageous example is that the families of the brave men and women who are killed while defending this nation will see a delay in the payment of death benefits because of this shutdown. Now, some may say, you're right, these problems for our national security are intolerable. Let's pass a bill to fix them. We have. The Senate passed a continuing resolution 3 times, the last 5 days ago, that would keep the government functioning. Speaker Boehner refuses to allow the House to vote on the Senate-passed continuing resolutions. And no matter how many piecemeal bills that the Speaker sends to us here in the Senate, he'll be leaving out millions of Americans who will continue to suffer from the shutdown that he and Tea Party-dominated Republicans have created. Every day they spend obsessing over Medicare, over Obamacare, is one more day of unfairness and uncertainty for our troops and their families. Every day the House Republicans' destructive submission to the Tea Party is another day that food isn't inspected. It's another day that FBI agents are working without pay. It's another day that SBA isn't approving loans for small businesses. It's another day that scientists are barred from their labs, and on and on. Speaker Boehner can bring this chaos to a halt by bringing the Senate's continuing resolution to the floor of the House for a vote. The Senate has voted 3 times on House versions of continuing resolutions. Speaker Boehner refuses to vote even once on the Senate bill. Why? This is the question, by the way, the media has not yet asked Speaker Boehner. Why? Why has he not brought to the floor of the House the Senate-passed continuing resolution? And here's the answer. And it's a stunning answer because it might pass. Now, you heard me right. The reason that Speaker Boehner is not bringing this continuing resolution passed in the Senate to the floor of the House for a vote is because it's going to pass. Now, that's anathema. It would be anathema to the Speaker of the House for a continuing resolution to pass if it depended upon Democratic votes. It is his policy not to depend on any Democratic votes to pass legislation in the House. The policy of the Speaker is truly the epitome of rank partisanship. In fact, I don't know of a clearer example of extreme partisan policy than Speaker Boehner's refusal to hold a vote on bills that would rely on some Democratic votes to pass. Madam President, one of Speaker Boehner's Republican colleagues, Congressman Dent of Pennsylvania, has verified this sad fact. Here's what Congressman Dent said, quote, "I do believe it's imperative that we do have a clean funding bill to fund the government." And then he continued, "That was the intent of the Republican leadership all along. But obviously there were a few dozen folks in the House Republican Conference who weren't prepared to vote for a clean bill." And here's his conclusion. This is now a Republican congressman speaking last night, saying, "A few dozen folks in the House Republican Conference weren't prepared to vote for a clean bill, and that's why we're in the situation we're in right now." Close quote. Madam President, that is an astonishing report of abdication of leadership in the House of Representatives. What an incredible statement about the stranglehold that a few dozen ideological zealots now have on the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. It is an extraordinary moment in history when a Speaker of the House allows a few dozen members of Congress to bring the government of this nation to a standstill. When you cut through all the claims and all the counterclaims, all the press conferences, all the photo ops, there is one unassailable, indisputable fact that remains. The Senate has passed a continuing resolution to keep the government open, and Speaker Boehner refuses to bring it to a vote in the House of Representatives. It need not be this way. All that is required to break the stranglehold that the Tea Party has on House Republicans is for Speaker Boehner to bring the Senate-passed continuing resolution that would reopen the government to the floor of the House for a vote. I urgently hope that he'll do so, and I hope that every hour until he does, he is asked to defend his refusal to do so.